Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Scientists are discovering that the more we know about the great apes, the better man can understand himself. The ape we know most about is the chimpanzee of Africa, one of the world's most intelligent animals. Its capacity for learning and the similarity of its behavior and emotions to man make it an extremely interesting animal to observe. Part of the reason why we know the chimp best is because of the intensive studies initiated by one scientist in particular. Today, we'll meet that scientist and see how these studies, which began over a quarter of a century ago, are continuing. The chimpanzee studies have been taking place in the East African country of Tanzania at the now well-known Gombe Stream National Park. This important wildlife park is located along the shores of Lake Tanganyika, one of the longest and deepest freshwater lakes in the world, a lake flanked by a mountain range rising steeply from the waters. The forested slopes and valleys found here are a natural habitat for the chimpanzees and easily accessible to researchers. It was in this ideal location that the Gombe Stream Research Center was established, making it possible for the first time to do extensive studies of the chimpanzee in the wild. The scientist responsible for all of this is today well known as one of the world's foremost primatologists, Dr. Jane Goodall.
These are the buildings of the Gombe Stream Research Center. When I began to study chimpanzees here 25 years ago, I was on my own. Today, the research carries on with the help of a team of enthusiastic and highly trained Tanzanian field staff.
Dr. Goodall's team includes several groups. The camp team is comprised of two men named ALLAN and Hamisi. Their job is to observe all the chimpanzee activities occurring here at the camp. These are wild chimpanzees who have come here from the surrounding forested slopes. While in camp, they will be under the close scrutiny of Tanzanian observers.
There are always two observers in camp, all day, every day of the year, to record which chimpanzees arrive, if any do, and what they do while they're here. To attract chimpanzees into the camp, they are given bananas to eat. Each chimpanzee is fed a few bananas about once every 10 days. This helps to bring to the camp shy animals we might see only very seldom in the forest.
Though Dr. Goodall oversees the work of her various teams, she continues to do a great deal of observing on her own. This is a display of male dominance which the young chimps watch closely, some of them storing the information for the time when one day they may also be able to display dominant behavior.
When it is about time for a chimp to be fed, the animal comes to investigate the camp area. He then heads directly to the place where we have established a low feeding station with a ground-level window which serves for distribution of food. ALLAN will feed the waiting chimps by entering this door to a connecting building which leads to the hidden room. To minimize human association, he will not be visible when putting out the food. Hamisi waits nearby to observe and take notes. The bananas are doled out so only one chimp is fed at a time. A large dominant male named Satan helps himself first. As the chimps normally do, he chews peels and all, with no concern that he is being observed. Bananas are a special treat, since they do not grow in the chimp's range. Hamisi takes this opportunity to note the state of Satan's health. While they are here, family groups, like this mother with a juvenile child and an infant, can be studied closely. This infant is not yet feeding on solid foods, but is curious and determined to taste everything his mother eats. Rolling food in the mouth is a bit like chewing gum. The chimp sucks and chews the fruit to extract all the juices and then usually spits out the remains. The chimpanzees often show human-like characteristics, and one of these is possessiveness. When they have finished their bananas, some of the chimps head for the forest at once, while others continue to loll about in the camp area to engage in the social activities that play such an important part in the chimpanzee's life. It is at such times that some of the more fundamental mother-infant relationships can be recorded. After observing chimps over several generations, we now know that family traditions can be passed on from mother to child.
Jane Goodall finds that one major advantage of the feeding program, which only occurs in camp, is that it enables the observers to keep close track of reproductive females and infant development. After feeding and socializing in camp, the chimps head back into their forested habitat. One problem Dr. Jane Goodall encountered early in her research at Gombe Stream was how to keep a record of the weight change of the chimps that came into camp without capturing or handling them. The problem was solved with an ingenious system involving a can filled with bananas attached to a rope suspended from a scale. When the chimp goes up the rope, his full weight is suspended from the scale, permitting Islam to read the weight, which is about 75 pounds. He is not yet fully grown. An adult male might weigh as much as 110 pounds. The researchers try to weigh as many of the chimps as possible once a month. Weight change often serves as a barometer to the animal's health. Throughout each day at Gombe, the research continues, and Jane visits at least briefly with each Tanzanian observer and checks on current projects. Today, techniques for recording chimp calls are being taught. The new field assistants are being instructed by visiting scientist Dr. Chris Bohm. The chimps that have been attracted to camp eventually leave and head back into the forest. Another of Jane's specialized teams will go with them. Today, they will concentrate on the actions of the adult male, Satan, and those with whom he interacts.
Hilali and Gabo will follow these chimpanzees, recording their behavior and their calls until they make their nests tonight. Another team will be on hand when the chimpanzees wake in the morning to follow them tomorrow.
Jane has learned that it is never wise to travel through these forests without her notebook. So often there are fascinating incidents to observe.
Chimpanzees use more objects as tools for more purposes than any other creature except ourselves. Here, a young chimp I've named Pax inserts a carefully trimmed twig into an entrance tunnel in this termite mound. The termites attack the twig, seizing it with their jaws, and Pax then withdraws the twig and devours them. The fishing for termites represents a learned behavior, that is passed on from one generation to the next.
For a quarter of a century, Dr. Jane Goodall has been observing chimpanzees. In the process, she has become the most knowledgeable person on Earth regarding chimp behavior. Every action observed has its own particular form of importance. Jane's presence has become so commonplace in the Gombe forest that whenever she appears, the chimpanzees pay little attention. This chimp simply continues to feed on the nutritious fruit of the oil nut palm, one of the most important foods in their diet. In her years of research in this forest, Jane has found that many of the chimp's social relationships show a great similarity to those of human beings. The relationship between a mother and her child is of crucial importance to the developing youngster.
Some chimpanzee mothers are gentle and affectionate. Others are brusque and less tolerant. The way a child is raised can have a powerful influence on its behavior and rank as an adult. And so we have trained a team of Tanzanians to make detailed observations on mother-infant relationships.
This team is comprised of Uhaya and Yusufu, and their skilled observations are consistently of great value in Jane's continuing studies.
Through observing these families, we see how a juvenile female like this, playing with her infant brother, learns how to care for him, and eventually her own daughters will learn these things from her. The baby, Wolfie, is learning from everything he sees or touches. The chimp mother nurses her baby for 5 years, finally weaning it when the next one is born. When we look at chimpanzees in nature, we understand better how our own early ancestors might have lived.
Of all the various behavioral traits of the chimpanzees that Dr. Jane Goodall observes and records, family social activities are the most appealing. From the beginning of her chimpanzee studies in 1960, Jane has placed special emphasis on close observation of infant development and infant-mother relationships. Play, especially between the siblings, is very important for the growing youngster. Jane is always observing, always wondering, always trying to meet the challenge of understanding more fully the complex and often puzzling behavior of the chimpanzees. But while the main thrust of her studies has been the chimpanzees, she has not overlooked the other primates of the Gombe Stream area. She also has a special team of Tanzanians recording the behavior and social activities of the baboons. These observers find that a great deal of baboon social behavior is very similar to that of the chimpanzees.
The baboons compete with the chimpanzees for food at Gombe. They're fascinating creatures in their own right, and we've been studying them almost as long as the chimpanzees. In this area, where the baboon research is occurring, there are some fairly wide beaches along the shore of Lake Tanganyika. It is along these beaches that at some point every day the baboons congregate to drink and search for food at the lake's edge. A favorite pastime of the young is to play, and in doing this they also learn the strengths and weaknesses of their companions. This will serve them in good stead later when they compete as adults for rank in the troop. Only when the lake is calm like this will they play in the water, and some of them even enjoy swimming. There is strong affection between family members that closely parallels that of humans. The baboons share the same habitat with the chimpanzees, and the young of these two species will quite often play together. Chimpanzees communicate by means of many calls, each of which means something different. One of the special jobs of the Tanzanians is to make sound recordings of these calls in an effort to better understand chimpanzee communication. The chimps become especially vocal when a fight breaks out. The brief fight and all of this excited calling stimulates a display of dominance by the alpha male. Chimpanzee aggression is violent, but soon over.
The work accomplished at Gombe has taught mankind a great deal. Above all, how much more remains to be learned. There is strong evidence from these studies that in a great many ways, chimps show remarkable similarities to man. Dr. Jane Goodall feels there is a unique value to the chimpanzee study. As she often says, the better we understand chimpanzees, the better we may understand ourselves. The chimpanzees live for 40 to 50 years in the wild, and that's why the long-term study initiated by Jane Goodall has been of such continuing value. An extended study allows for close observation over several generations and identifies behavioral patterns of the chimps as a species. The study also records new behavioral traits and individual variations. Beyond that, because of dedicated scientists like Dr. Jane Goodall and those who are continuing in the field of primate study that she pioneered, we all are acquiring a much greater insight into one of the most intelligent species in the wild kingdom.